can tip that down a little bit. It's a real honor to be here in front of all of you today to honor my partner, Jenna Lyons. Jenna is an individual as a new lawyer that epitomizes the beliefs that I think everyone here holds. She has a commitment for helping the injured, but also goes beyond that. In the situations where it requires not only commitment, but friendship, dedication, intelligence, and flat out a willingness not to give up, she does that. From knowing and getting to work with Jenna, she is the thing as myself. I still think of myself kind of as a young trial lawyer, and it's ironic because, I mean, I've been practicing now 25 years, but I hang around with old lawyers like David Paoli, Jim Manley, and these individuals that make me feel young. But when you get around, I had a feeling that he might speak up. I don't know why. But when you get that passion and see a new lawyer come up that doesn't have the fear or the you just recognize it. There is a part in that person that knows that the most important 8 words that you can ever know is never give in, never, never, never give in. And Jenna's that way. And we've had difficult cases. And what I love most about Jenna is when she finishes a case, she doesn't move to the next case. That person's going to be a lifelong friend of hers. And, you know, that's something that's just internally special about her on it. And I know now that I've been practicing 25 years and David's been like 47 or something like that. Anyways, but that we're going to be left in good hands because there's going to be advocates for our clients, no matter what, that are going to have people like her that aren't afraid to tackle the tough cases or to shy away from cases that might not be popular or profitable. We do a lot of work. Jenna's done a ton of work pro bono and work for individuals that have been abused. And, you know, seeing her take that and run with it in a manner that just, it makes me happy to get up and come to work and call her my partner. And so I appreciate, and there's no person more deserving than Jenna is for this award because it's, she should reinvigorate, and the people like her reinvigorate us with this much experience to come to work because their excitement carries on to what I want to do. And I'm so proud to be able to call Jenna my partner, but also more importantly, give her this time to be honored because there's no one I can even think of that would be more deserving of this award. Thank you.
Hard to start a speech already crying. So I was thinking about, I heard that I had to give a long speech for this, like 45 minutes, based on past speeches. And I was thinking about it today. I was like, what could I possibly say to this group of people that might be impactful or inspiring? Because to me, you are all like superstars to me. Oof. And the only thing I can think to say is thank you. Life inspired me to make something of myself and to help other people. And if I can get it together, ooh, it's funny, we go up and do this in front of the jury, right? And we're like, we have it all together and it's all great. And then we might win or lose, but we're not crying. And right now I'm crying. I wanted to call out some specific people in the room, or maybe not in the room, who have been impactful mentors to me, and to say thank you. And I'll kind of go in order. Professor Monroe, in law school, he got me excited about insurance, which is bizarre and very important to this career, to know how to hold insurance companies accountable and do so in a way that helps our clients. He also taught me to keep my body healthy and to take care of myself so that I can show up for my clients. Professor Gagliardi got me excited about business law, which is also bizarre, but helps me on a daily basis. I think it's important as plaintiffs' lawyers to be well-rounded and to understand business transactions, and that definitely comes into play. Randy Bishop, he was my trial team coach, one of them, and I was like in there trying to come up with a good closing argument, and I was just kind of doing what I'm doing now, like floundering, and he took me aside and he said, the most important thing you can do is to be yourself and to speak from your heart. And I've just done that in front of the jury, in front of my clients, and in my relationships, and it's helped me time and time again. Who else? Lawndale. I interned for Lawndale during law school, and we have a case together right now, actually, in front of the Ninth Circuit, holding an insurance company accountable. Lon shows up at 6 p.m. He's always working, and he taught me that it's so important to be diligent and to leave no stone unturned, even if it means that you're working all weekend or sending me emails at 10 p.m. on a Friday night. And he's still doing it. Milt Dotsopoulos, he taught me that you should treat everybody, every client, rich or poor, like a king or a queen. He told me that. And that's been one of the most important lessons that I ever learned. Because those are the people that make our lives possible and make all the difference. Nate Wagner, he let me try cases with him when I was a 2-year lawyer, and he let me do, I don't know why. He didn't know what skills I had or anything like that, and we got tremendous results. That trial, we tried a case against managers of a trailer park because a little boy, 3-year-old little boy, got hit and killed in that park by a teenager driving too fast, and they knew it was going to happen, and it happened, and his dad watched him on Thanksgiving Day, made eye contact with the little boy, and then saw him get hit and killed. And we sued the trailer park, and the insurance company wasn't offering anything fair, and we took him to task, went to trial, and we got a verdict that changed the outcome of the family's life. And I have a picture of that little boy on my desk. It's the reason why I'm doing this. It's just why we do what we do, making a difference. Yeah. And then today I was interviewing multiple lawyers. We're making a video for MTLA because social media is a thing now. And Dave Paoli, he made me cry, just been crying all day. But he said in trial, for the clients, it may be the first time that they've been equal or able to hold accountable the person that hurt them. And that made a big impact on me. For some of these people, it's the first time someone has stood up for them and believed in them. And so I have great confidence that the people in this room and the future of the Trial Lawyers Association will continue to do that, and will continue to keep things right and keep things the way that they need to be. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful for this award.
I'd like to introduce Sid McKenna, who's going to present our Citizens Award.
This year, MTLA Citizens of the Year Award, which is a pretty cool award, goes to Tessa Breyer for her pursuit of the truth and justice for her brother, Johnny Sheldon, and her advancement of rights for all workers who are injured on the job in the state of Montana. Here's the story. It's July 3rd, 2017. Tessa got that call, the one no one wants. She learned that something had happened to her brother, who was working filling tanks at an industrial gas place in Billings. He was in the hospital and he might not make it. She hung up the phone, she loaded up her family, and they drove to Billings, Montana. When Tessa arrived at the hospital, Johnny was on life support. His coworkers were there, and some of them were very concerned about the safety of the company and that OSHA had yet to be called. So to kind of demonstrate Tessa's tenacity, she called and requested a meeting with company representatives to find out what happened to her brother. During the meeting, Tessa felt something just wasn't right. Something was amiss. And it turns out she was right. The work comp insurer, quick like a bunny, denied the work comp claim on the basis that was supported by the employer's version of the events, that Johnny simply had a heart attack and that the gas exposure was nitrogen, which was no big deal. Because the claim was denied and Johnny's health insurance was canceled by the company, there was no way to pay for a rehab center. So Johnny was moved to a Havre nursing home. Tessa visited him when she could. In 2020, she was surprised to learn that his temporary guardianship had lapsed. So she used her own money to hire an attorney in Havre to become his guardian to protect his rights. Then she reached out to me. She had questions. Why did Johnny go down? What really happened that day? Why was his insurance claim, the work comp insurance claim, denied? And I told her, do not get your hopes up. The trail is cold. Johnny can't communicate. Evidence will have disappeared. The statute of limitations may have run. And if he did have a heart attack, we have no case. And I also told her, importantly, Even if we win, Tessa, you get nothing out of this. You are not a beneficiary under the Workers' Compensation Act. Any monies that we would receive would go to Johnny's estate and to his children. She didn't care. She wanted answers. So Justin Starren, my wonderful law partner, I'm so lucky to have Justin as a law partner, and I associated with Steve Carey and the Carey Law Firm, and with the help from our great legal assistant, Catherine Driscoll, and Tessa, we all got to work. Tessa spent hours pouring through OSHA documents, claim documents, and was key to finding inconsistencies in the employer's version of events. She spent her own money to travel to Billings to attend a 3-day trial. And by the way, her Aunt Inez, who is sitting with her, who is from Chester, also traveled to watch the trial. So what did Tessa accomplish? First, she found the truth. By pursuing this case, she uncovered a cover-up by the employer who was trying to avoid a catastrophic claim. In fact, Johnny was exposed to a deadly gas, argon, which completely displaces oxygen in the body. And I just have to digress, but after the day Johnny went down, there was a photo showing the swing arm connected to the argon. But when OSHA arrived after an employee called them, there were sticky labels like you have on your shirt with your name right now, placed onto the black placards that said that it was nitrogen. Second, Tessa held that the work comp insurance companies, she held them accountable for a pathetically woeful investigation. As Judge Sandler held, insurers must follow obvious leads. When it doesn't, it should be penalized, and he penalized them here. The insurance adjuster at the trial did not know that Johnny had been exposed to gas. And finally, Tessa turned back the insurance company's get out of jail free card. You see, they argued that even though Johnny could not manage his own affairs, he needed help with all activities of daily living. He was catastrophically injured. He did not have a guardian, that the statute of limitations should still run, so Tessa's attempts were too late. Judge Sandler and the Montana Supreme Court affirmed the legal, and I would argue the moral principle, that the law is nothing if not just, and timelines are halted for those people who are unable to help themselves. These are important rulings for catastrophically injured workers in Montana. It's been over 6 years since Johnny's injury, and he died a few months after our trial. But today we recognize and honor Tessa. Tessa pursued this case, one she would never gain from financially, and in fact cost her money, because she sought the truth. She did it because she loved her brother who lay helpless and needed a voice and an advocate. Tessa wanted justice for Johnny. To quote the Sermon on the Mount, "Let your light shine before all, so that we may see your good works." Tessa, you have done that. Congratulations on being MTLA Citizen of the Year.
I never thought this would come to this. I'm very honored to be even amongst the list of nominees that were given an opportunity for this award. because we all have our story. And mine was chosen that's just a bigger honor. My brother was very patient, kind, very hard worker. He was dedicated to his work, gave his life for his work. I haven't been alone on this journey. I have the best team you could ask for. Began with my family, my husband, who listened to me cry when I should have been sleeping. My Aunt Inez, who held my hand the whole way. And my team. Sid, with her listening ear, her fiery soul, and the desire to find a way. I was pretty pushy. I thank you. I appreciate you. You will never know how much I appreciate you. Steve and Justin, your mix of the matter-of-factly and the go-get-em attitude, I needed that. I still need that. Thank you. Catherine and Lori, they've been behind the scenes working, helping you guys. Their communication is amazing. Thank you. When all of this is behind us, it's going to be integrity that gets the win. And so what I say is, my lawyer is better than yours. And that award will be a daily reminder in finding justice for John. Thank you. Thank you all.
As I was listening, I just couldn't help but realizing that it's really our courageous clients that are the foundation and the centerpiece. What they do and their courage is what allows us to do what we do. This year, the nominees for this award, all 4 of them were amazing. And I just want to take a moment to recognize the other 3 nominees. Leona Bear comes out, Kenny and Cheryl Harris, and Travis Tolan. I'd like to introduce Anthony Jackson, who is going to introduce our Public Service Award.
All right, so the L. Smith Public Service Award goes to the individual who has distinguished themselves in the last year in representing people in Montana and others who we all serve. Now, Mike McGrath, or the chief, as he's generally referred to, has achieved that much more than just in the last year. His entire lifetime has been dedicated to serving our clients and the people of Montana. Mike was born, I believe was born, but definitely was raised in Butte, Montana. And I thought about just going and saying, you know, who has a connection to Mike from Butte? And go ahead and we'll do an open mic and you can come up and tell a Mike story. But then I realized some of those stories might not be appropriate. And so we're not gonna do that. But I am kind of curious, who in here has a connection to Mike from Butte? Got a handful of people. It's interesting because as I was getting ready to do this, I called a bunch of the justices and judges throughout the state who had worked with him. And the stories were awesome. And I had to remind some of those judges and justices that this was not preparation for opposition research against Mike. So you just got to give me some stories that we can use here, and we'll run with them. But there were some great stories. But really, it kept coming back to his history and his service of Montana and what he's done. Mike graduated from the University of Montana in 1970. Which I guess shows his perseverance as well, because I assume that he got rejected from MSU and ended up having to come here. But he did a hell of a job, great career anyways. He then went to Gonzaga Law School and graduated from Gonzaga and immediately took a fellowship in Reno, Nevada, representing low income and at needs based clients. And that was one of the things that kind of stood out to me when I learned that, because I didn't know that before. When I was clerking at the Montana Supreme Court, there was an insurance case actually that involved some of the people here. And after we got done with the oral argument, the clerks all kind of come together, and I was talking with the justice who I worked for, and we were probably trying to show how smart we were being a year out of law school. And so we were talking about what the case was about and, some esoteric BS, legal, whatever. And I don't know how he heard this or what was going on, but he came walking in and he just said, that's not what this case is about. This case is about, and then he talked about the plaintiff and who that plaintiff was and what they went through and what their experience with the legal system was. And that always stood out to me. It stood out to me my entire last 11 years of practicing law, that we have a Chief Justice who gets that what we do is about the people. It's not about the law, because this is going to impact real people at the end of the day. And he gets that. And that's a profound thing, because you will see way too many attorneys, and all of us have fallen into it, where we sometimes get caught up in the law and we forget it's not about the damn law, it's about the people. And Mike McGrath has never forgot that. And when I learned about his history of representing people who needed help and couldn't normally afford it and obtain it, that just all of a sudden, I was like, that makes sense. No wonder. That's what he heard us saying what we were saying, and he wanted to make the point that that's not what this damn case is about. It's about the people. And that personifies who Mike McGrath is. Mike has served the people of Montana his entire career. After graduating law school, he went to the Attorney General's office. He then became the county attorney. He then became the Montana Attorney General. And since 2008, he has been the Chief Justice of the Montana Supreme Court. He's a very, very distinguished man, and he has a distinguished look to him, which is kind of awesome, because one of the stories I wanted to share with you that I got was about a trip that he took. This is a trip on the San Juan River, which is down south. And the river, I've looked it up, it's quite a bit different than the rivers around Montana. There's not a lot of trees. The water's pretty dirty, but mostly it's very open. It's really open. So when I was calling these judges and justices, I was getting all these stories and, being told all these things, and what is Mike about? One thing that kept coming up was transparency. Mike was always about transparency with the court. He wanted transparency. He wanted people to see what was going on with transparency. So this story stood out to me on transparency, but maybe in a little bit different way. So Mike's on a rafting trip, and every year the chief, and I shouldn't say Mike, I'm sorry, I just got used to it clerking, the chief, he goes on the Smith every year. And for those who have floated the Smith, you know that there's some of the most scenic bathrooms that you're ever going to find. Smith River, they're getting rid of it. They said they were going to get rid of it this year. They didn't. They're going to get rid of it next year, apparently. But there's these beautiful bathrooms. So Mike's floating down the San Juan River, and they get to their campsite. And I guess Mike thought that he was going to kind of recreate the Smith River bathroom deal. So y'all know what a groover is. We know who the boaters are in the place. A groover's your toilet, right? So Mike was like, I'm going to take my groover and I'm going to put it in this super scenic place, right? Where it's like beautiful, lovely. Everybody can, by the way, if your phone rings, you have to bring donuts for everybody. So that's kind of a legislator rule that they used to have. So we won't make you bring donuts actually, but Mike puts his groover out in this beautiful place. And this river is not a super busy river, so he figured he was going to be okay, right? Well, you know, nature comes along. Mike has to go and do his business. Gets up on the toilet, sitting there, and all of a sudden, just the way that you'd expect it, this river that has not had a single boat down it the entire day, other than Mike, bunch of great older ladies come down and see Mike sitting on the groover right out in the middle of everyone. And so transparency, right? So my question was like, what did he do? Did he get up? Did he run away? No, he just sat there. And he finished his business and they floated by and everybody kind of made eye contact and it was awkward and weird, I guess. But I love the idea of such a distinguished looking gentleman sitting out in the middle of nowhere, boat full of beautiful, great people floating by looking at him. And they probably had no idea that that was the Montana Supreme Court Justice. But I love the idea. I love it anyways. And that was one of the stories that I could share that I got about Mike. But really, Mike's getting this award this year, not just because of his enduring service that he's given to Montanans throughout his entire career, but because of what we're seeing going on in the state and Mike fighting against it. Everybody in this room has a responsibility to understand that our democracy is under attack. This is no joke what we're seeing going on. And the people who are attacking it see the courts, including our Montana courts, as the last hurdle to achieving what they want. And what they want is not good for us. It's not good for our clients. It's not good for the average Montanans. And it's not good for the citizenry. It's what's good for their huge mega corporations and their own pocketbooks. We all have a responsibility to do what we can to fight against that. And Mike has spent the last year fighting against that. He's fought to establish that the judicial branch is the third branch and a co-equal branch with the Montana legislature and with the executive. It's a third of the government. It only takes 2% of the budget, but it will stand and fight when it has to stand and fight. And Mike has dedicated himself this last year to fighting for our democracy. And that is the reason that Mike is getting this award today, in addition to everything else that he's done. So please join me in applause for Chief Justice Mike McGrath. Sorry about the Groover story. Yeah. You're very welcome.
Well, can't believe I came over here to listen to a Groover story. I have more, but I won't do that. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for dressing up, man. That really appreciate that too. This really is an honor. I appreciate the recognition and the support that I've been really lucky over the course of my life, frankly. and had some incredible parents, had an incredibly good education, had some great jobs working in the mines in Butte, had an opportunity over the years to meet a lot of really wonderful people. And so I just feel fortunate that I've had the opportunity to serve the people of Montana as long as I have. And many of you supported those efforts long time ago. And a lot of people in this room were there then and have continued to be there. And I really do appreciate that. I want to thank you for all those years of support. And particularly, I want to thank you all for the support that the courts have received. This is a tough time we're looking at now, as Anthony mentioned. The courts are under attack. It's stunning, the kinds of things that have been suggested about why we have an independent judiciary, and it has not been an easy fight. This session alone, there were, I think, maybe 24 proposals to amend the Constitution. Fortunately, MTLA, State Bar of Montana, the Judges Association, other groups stood up, carried the day, and we were able to fight back all of those attempts. Some of them, most of them died with 3 or 4 votes, could have made the difference. We could be looking at proposals that would structurally change the court system and the independence of the judiciary as we know it now. Fortunately, in Montana, we elect our judges. We elect the independent third branch of government, and we elect them from members of our own communities. This year, 2024, we have some incredible challenges facing us. There are 35, well, in addition to the 2 Supreme Court vacancies that we'll have in 2024, there are 35 district court judges that are up for election. Some of them are going to not run again. By the way, 2 of them are in the room tonight. Judges Amy Eddy and Mike Menahan are here with us tonight. But there are 33 other district court judges, hopefully, well, all of them will be elected by their members of their community. And that provides an opportunity, but it also provides an incredible challenge. So I would ask you, and those of you that are here, and all of the folks that you associate with, to accept the challenge, to be aware of what's at stake. It is the independence of the judiciary that is indeed at stake. And I would hope that all of you take that challenge and get engaged in this election that's coming up in 2024. Thanks again for all the past support over the years, and no more Groover stories.
I just want to add, I spent quite a bit of time up at the Capitol this year, and I found it ironic that Chief Justice McGrath was thanking us, because the courage that it took him to stand up personally, not just as the Chief Justice of the the Montana Supreme Court, to stand up to what was going on and stand up for the constitutional precedent that goes back, like pre-Magna Carta, this concept of separating judges and executives. And the courage that it took him to do that was amazing. So thank you. I'd like to introduce Hillary Carls, who will be presenting our Appellate Advocacy Award.
There's some taller people than me. Hello, everyone. It is a really great pleasure that I can present this award to Tim Bechtold and John Heenan. It's just a real pleasure to have nominated these guys for their really amazing appellate advocacy this year. Tim told me about this case in Butte, so it feels like good to talk about Butte some more. We were in the bar, the vault. I call it the vault. I know it's probably not what it's called, but it has the big vault in there. And he tells me about this case, and I'm just going to read the Supreme Court summary of the facts of this matter. But Tim and John, they represent a Northern Cheyenne tribal member who was being investigated by the Bureau of Indian Affairs officer for crimes involving some alcohol consumption. And he says to their client, something had to be done. And the Supreme Court described what happened next as, LB inferred that Officer Bullcoming did not want to arrest her, so she inquired if by something needs to be done, that meant sex. Officer Bullcoming replied affirmatively. LB believed that her choices were to go to jail or have sex with Officer Bullcoming. LB had unprotected sexual intercourse with Officer Bullcoming in her home. LB became pregnant and as a result gave birth to DB. They lost in the federal district court. But on appeal to the Ninth Circuit certified the question to the Montana Supreme Court. Under Montana law, do law enforcement officers act outside the scope of their employment as a matter of law when they use their authority as an on-duty officer to sexually assault a person they are investigating for a crime? The Montana Supreme Court wisely said no. The language in this order is really what inspires me. I'm a super law nerd, and I'm particularly interested in the roles of police in our communities. This order from the Supreme Court has some of the strongest language I have ever read describing what important roles police officers have in our communities and how they do intimidate people they are investigating. If you're at all interested in it, I really encourage you in reading this language. It's something that I will cite for years to come. Not only that, Tim had oral argument before the Supreme Court here at the University of Montana. And those who were able to watch this have definitely said it was a masterclass in appellate advocacy. So it is a great honor and a true joy that both of these advocates were able to overturn the federal district court and win this case. It's a good case for everyone who's interested in employment. It's a good case for their client. And with that, welcome John and Tim.
Thank you, Hillary, and thank you all. The case of missing and murdered Indigenous women is in critical importance to our communities here in Montana. And the particular difficulties that Native women face on reservations today is a real and present problem. Just so you know, Dana Bullcoming, who was the BIA officer in this case, was cited for a civil rights violation. And the federal judge sentenced him to 3 years in federal prison when he had a guideline sentence of 17 and a statutory maximum of 10. He was released from prison, and as this case was working its way through the system, it came to be, as you know, as Hillary described, the case went to the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit, after oral argument, certified it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, after oral argument, sent it back to the Ninth Circuit, which sent it back to the district court. And the United States at that time deposed Officer Bullcoming. In that deposition, I asked him, so, how many other women did you have sex with while you were in uniform and on duty? He said, about a dozen. I said, oh, they dislike the uniform? He said, I guess so. This is a situation that Native women on our reservations face every day. I've represented women on the Blackfeet, Fort Belknap, Fort Peck, Cheyenne, and Crow. The situation is no different for any of those women. They face onslaught every day from not just law enforcement, but just from the unfortunate situation on our reservations today for all those women. And I can only urge all of us to recognize that situation and do your part for all of us lawyers in this room to pick up those cases for these people. They need your help. They need our help, and we can certainly do it. I'd like to commend, first of all, the Ninth Circuit panel. I'd like to commend our Supreme Court. Thank you, Chief Justice, for looking at this case and seeing that there is a definite need in our community. And I'd like to thank John Heenan, my co-counsel, amazing lawyer, did a great job in this case. And I'd like to thank all of you, every one of us, who represent the poor and the downtrodden, because that is the only way that they're ever going to get justice. Thanks.
I want to let Calvin hear his dad's speech here in a minute. So what Tim said, thank you, everybody.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Tom Beers.
Can you hear me? So my award is being allowed to give the Career Achievement Award. And I'd like to do that. Jenna, I can remember when I was at your time in the career. So more power to you. You know, I gave a speech one time at a seminar, and I said, you know, we attorneys, we need to be more than just attorneys. We have to do more than that. The other thing I'd like to say is that there are so many of you out there that are so articulate and can stand here and say such wonderful words, and you do it to a jury. I simply, after 50 years of doing this, I can't do it. I just can't do it. The words I want, what I feel from my heart, if I don't write it down, to me at least, it doesn't come out right. So I'm going to use my notes, if that's okay. The MTLA Career Achievement Award goes to a member who has made enduring contributions to the citizens of Montana and the practice of law. It likewise recognizes those who have consistently demonstrated superior advocacy skills throughout a long career. 2 qualifications: enduring contributions to the citizens of Montana and superior advocacy skills. This year, we honor the Honorable James Manley. thanks to everybody, we actually hid this from him. If we wouldn't have hid it from him, he wouldn't have come. Because Jim never talks about himself. Jim never talks about what he has done. He's always talking about others. So let me try to talk about Jim. I've known Jim for going on 60 years. That's why I get to call him Jim. Life experiences not only build character, they are the foundation of who we become. Now, my sequencing may not all be right, but I'm telling you, the facts are accurate. Jim went to high school in Missoula and then to the University of Montana, graduating with a degree in English literature. Importantly, through part of that time, Jim was basically homeless. He lived in his car. On one occasion, he and his best friend borrowed the friend's sister's Volkswagen to cruise the drag. I knew his friend too. They returned it 6 months later after traveling cross-country, living on the money they made from pop bottles and a few odd jobs. At a young age, Jim experienced a bit of the underbelly of our society. That experience has never escaped Jim. It has lived in him every day of his life. After a stint in Vietnam, Jim moved his then very young family to Oregon, where he taught high school English literature. But every night, no matter how tired he was, he attended Lewis and Clark College in Portland, earning his law degree. Obtaining a job as a deputy in the Lake County Attorney's Office, he moved to Polson. Thereafter, he started a small practice, never turning down anyone. And his daughter told me 50% of Jim's practice was always pro bono. For years, I never really knew Jim's full background, but I knew he always felt a great deal of compassion and empathy for the underdog. We would be walking down the street talking, and Jim, he's pulling out a $5 bill to give it to a homeless person. He'd have me stop my car so that he could run over and give money to a fellow with a bag on his shoulder or pushing a shopping cart. That happened a lot. You know, as a plaintiff lawyer, Jim won many sizable verdicts for his clients. But I would contend Jim's motivation was as a cause attorney, always helping those he felt were less fortunate than him, but he was never superior. Those are the cases in which he loved to be involved. It ain't right, Tom, he would say. That's what he'd call me, Tom. He was a master strategist. He always wanted to share any case that might have a substantial return with others. He would put teams together. He would co-counsel. Sometimes there would be a recovery of a sizable sum. Often there wasn't. But what was important to Jim was making a difference. He did that in spades throughout his career. He made us all feel so good about that work. You know, I could tell you a lot of war stories about Jim, his trial skills and his verdicts, but we can talk about them at the bar. He already received Trial Lawyer of the Year, so you're all aware of his advocacy and great storytelling skills. You are aware of his many years leading the annual convention in Polson and Whitefish. You are all aware of his starting the Trial Academy and how we learned so much from the Montana seasoned trial lawyers. You know, there's so much to really tell about Jim. But more important, I believe, and I actually think he believes, comes from his achievements as a district court judge. There is simply not enough time for me to go into the trials he has held and the judgments he has rendered. But I can tell you many have had enduring contributions to the citizens of Montana. You all know them. Instead, I want to talk about Judge Manley's drug court. In 2017, Lake County handled upward of 500 drug-related felonies. Jim told the paper at least 400 of those were parents. Jim said it broke his heart to see families broke apart by addiction. His courtroom, he said, was an addiction courtroom. Jim, together with what the paper identified as a cast of colorful characters, started working on solutions. Under Jim's leadership, his team, which included his wife, Julia, started a drug court. Many, if not most, of the drug addiction and alcoholism was on the reservation. The longest-serving tribal council member, Carol Lankford, worked with Jim and his team from the very beginning. So let's jump ahead to 2022. The program had been operating since 2017. Jim invited me up to see his drug court in action. I asked Greg Monroe if he would join me. It was 5 o'clock on a Wednesday. We walked in. The Polson courtroom was packed. There were only 2 seats in the back. Greg and I grabbed them. The team which determined who would be allowed in the drug court were now all graduates of his program. Their peers. They sat up front. Upward of 35 users, abusers, and families of those appearing before the judge, each at a different level or time spent in the program, were present. You know, the atmosphere was electric. Everyone there wanted the participants to succeed. It was so far from what you would expect in a courtroom. They would stand up and encourage. They would tell them they were good. They had a wonderful family and they could succeed. You can do it, Joe. We're all with you, Linda. Those were things that Greg and I heard. There were tears. There was such encouragement. The incomparable Judge Manley making people that were down and out feel good about themselves. It was truly awe-inspiring. The caring, the whole courtroom wanting their friends and relatives to succeed. They loved Jim Manley, and Jim Manley loved them. It's the best thing I've ever done in my life, Jim told me. To me, however, it was Jim having a platform where the character he had been building all of his life shone through. Not only was Jim's gift of making feel good about themselves demonstrated in spades, he was saving countless lives. He and his team were pulling drowning people out of the deep end of the pool and teaching them how to swim. The recidivism rate went from around 85% before Jim started this program to about 15%. Jim was also greatly appreciated by the tribe. Greg and I were invited to a surprise gathering by the Confederated Salish Kootenai Tribal Council for a surprise thank you and award ceremony at tribal headquarters for Judge Manley. Again, it was a surprise. Jim didn't know. Each council member spoke to Jim and thanked him for what he had done and accomplished for their members. A resolution honoring Jim was entered in the record. They gave him a plaque proclaiming their honor of him. There were songs, and they played the drums for Jim. Folks were hugging. You know, Jim isn't usually speechless. We'll see how it is tonight. But Jim, Greg, and I were, quite frankly, all in tears from what they said and how they appreciated their judge. You know, I don't know if Jim hadn't once been a kid sleeping in his car, homeless, barely getting by, whether he ever could have become such a hero to so many. But it was a foundation. A lot of character was built. In those times, they never escaped Jim. So I give you our friend, our colleague, our mentor, the Honorable James A. Manley.
Well, thank you. I wasn't expecting this. I feel like I was asked here under false pretenses. I was supposed to introduce the trial lawyers of the year. That's why I was told to come down here. So I don't really have anything prepared. And if I had known about this, I probably wouldn't have gone drinking beer with Jerusi this afternoon. And But you know, I've thought about what characterizes the people in this room. These are the best people I've ever known and the best friends I've ever made. And that starts with Mary Taylor and Al Smith, who don't get nearly enough credit for. I'm so proud of the trial lawyers of my generation. I remember back in 78 or 79 when I was starting, and one of the senior partners from one of the silk stocking firms showed up in court, and the judge positively genuflected in front of him. And at that time, the trial lawyers were like the unwelcome stepchildren of the bar. And in my generation of trial lawyers, that has changed, and they have become the most important force for justice, I think, in Montana. There were times when on the Montana Supreme Court, there were 3 or 4 past presidents of this organization, plus Justice Nelson. And over this period of time, we developed the best civil law for regular people, the best insurance law, insurance bad faith law, arbitration law. And so I'm proud of all of you. And as you get older, you realize, though, you know, you hope that you feel satisfaction for helping a lot of people. But what you really take away from this is the friendships that you make. And, you know, Tom Bierce and I have traveled everywhere from New York City to San Francisco and every place in between. And over a period of time, these are the things that are really important. And I'm happy to see Jenna and Patrick. And I feel like, you know, the fight goes on, the bullies are out there, and we have good young people, though, that I feel good about that. So thank you, and it's an honor. And thank you, Alan. Thank you, Mary.
Did anybody see if Judge Manley made it for oh, there he is right there. I'd like to reintroduce Judge Manley to, excuse me, Yeah, reintroduce Judge Manley to present the Trial Lawyer of the Year award. Hey, he thought he was getting another award.
So this is what I was told to come down here for. And I did write the nomination letter for Ben Snipes and Mark Kovacic for Trial Lawyer of the Year. And they had a trial this spring, and really impressed everybody with their trial advocacy. But the case was kind of close to me because it started off as my case 11 or 12 years ago. And at the time, I was too damn busy, and a woman came into my office and she told me a story, and I thought, if this is true, this should be on 60 Minutes. You know, it shouldn't be in a courtroom, but I wanted to check it out. But it was very complicated. The Whitefish Credit Union up there in Kalispell at one point had a ton of money. They had limitations on, I guess, credit unions have limitations on how they can loan money. And so one day, our client, Deanna McAtee, who was the most successful mortgage broker up there in the Flathead, was visited by their head loan officer, a guy named Johnson. And he said, I got a ton of money and I need to find a home for it. So he set up a complicated thing where she would go out, find all of the borrowers, they do everything in her name. It was very complicated, but long story short, she did it exactly like they demanded that she do it, and through about 40 transactions, and then one went bad, the person didn't pay, and in the meantime, 2008 happened, and there was a crash. So Whitefish Credit Union now had all these bad loans, and they fired their administrators, their loan officers, cleaned house, and proceeded to start foreclosing on everybody. Well, Deanna, who had done everything right as they had demanded, she's in, I think, Kenya on a church mission or something like that, and she gets a call, and she says, well, you're on TV here, it's a friend of hers, and there's an international arrest warrant out for you, and you're charged federally with fraud, and, you know, I probably don't have all the facts exactly right. She thought she was going to be arrested and put in a Kenyan jail and held there until there was an international extradition. And she didn't know anything about this, why this was even happening. So she comes back, she finds out that Whitefish Credit Union is suing her for fraud. She's been turned over to the U.S. Attorney's Office. They're prosecuting her. Before long at all, she was in bankruptcy court, and Whitefish Credit Union was challenging that. And so she came in and was telling me all this, and I was so busy, I didn't need another case. And then she said, the part that got her the worst, though, because she was all over the TV, radio, she said her kindergarten granddaughter had come to her and asked her, the Christmas was coming up, and she asked her, Grandma, would you not come to my Christmas program because I would be embarrassed? And so I hear that, how can you say no? But what I had to find out was, what did this Johnson say, the loan officer? So I go and tracked him down. He says, yeah, she never committed fraud. She did everything exactly like I demanded and required her to do. And I said, well, before they sued her and all that, and turned her over to the U.S. Attorney's Office, did anybody, Johnson, did anybody come talk to you and find out? I said, no, nobody from Whitefish Credit Union came and talked to me before they filed suit and everything. And so I said, okay, I would represent her. I start looking through the pleadings, and I noticed that sometime before, I don't remember, it was 6 months or a year or something like that, Johnson's deposition had been scheduled and then had been canceled by the Whitefish Credit Union attorneys. And so I went back and saw Johnson again. I said, well, when your deposition was scheduled, did you meet with the Whitefish attorneys then? And he said, yeah, they had me come in and they met. I said, did you tell them the same thing you told me, i.e. Deanna didn't commit any fraud. She did everything as you lined it out. He says, yeah, I told them. And I said, so shortly after that, then they called off the depositions, yeah. But the prosecution in federal court went on. The prosecution in the civil case went on. They continued to dispute her discharge in bankruptcy. And so I went to the attorney at the time and I said, look, at this point, everybody knows that you have no case, that no fraud took place. You've ruined this woman's life. So any decent person would dismiss the case. And the attorney, Sean Frampton, just looked at me and I said, you know, it's in Montana, it's personal too for the attorneys, because the attorneys can be sued for malicious prosecution, not just Whitefish Credit Union, if this is continued. Well, needless to say, it continued. Shortly after that, Governor Bullock appointed me to the bench, and luckily I was working with Mike McEwen, so he took the case over. This was like 2013, and he figured out pretty quick that this was going to be scorched earth, and discovery, everything was hard fought, so he decided that he should associate the Great Falls attorneys. So he called Ben or Mark, and they agreed to help him. Over the next 10 years, they got thrown out of district court, I think 3 times. It went up to the Montana Supreme Court 3 times, reversed every time. Finally, this spring came back. They had prepared me as a witness 3 times, and it was textbook. I mean, they came with their binder, they had all their questions, and it was impressive. So now finally it goes to trial this spring, and there was required mediation. Now, I wasn't there, but Whitefish Credit Union settled out early in the mediation. And then, so now it was left to Frampton or his law firm, whoever was the defendant. And it's my understanding the plaintiff offered to settle it for $300,000, but the attorney, defendant, made clear that there wasn't going to be a penny offered, that they were not settling it, they were going to trial. And there was even some trash talking. As they left the mediation, it's my understanding that the attorney says to Ben Snipes, well, I guess we're going to see about how good your trial skills are now, aren't we? And they found out how good the trial skills were. And so I kind of had a different perspective, because then I was their witness, and I got to go and witness the trial. And Mark Kovacic has a unique talent for taking the most complicated situation and making it clear so a jury can understand. And Ben Snipes comes from blue-collar family, and he's never outgrown that or hidden it. He was the one who questioned me, and so I'm watching the jury as he's questioning. The jury, he's talking to them in their language. He's one of them, and they loved him. You could tell. They loved him. So the jury verdict, I think it was $1.4 million, and then they added punitive damages on top of that. And this is for something that they'd never been offered a penny for in 10 years or more. And so I wrote the letter nominating them, and I don't think I've ever seen 2 attorneys more deserving of this award. So for Trial Lawyer of the Year, Mark Kovacic and Ben Snipes, you are, this is your day, because you are the Trial Lawyers of the Year. Congratulations. I'm so proud of you too. I'm really proud of you. You are the best organization. I'm proud of you.
Thank you, Judge Manley, and thanks for dressing up. And thank you, MTLA, for recognizing our work in the McAtee case. When we took the case over from Judge Manley, I did not expect to still be working on it 10 years later. But I'm happy that we did. I'm happy that we took it to trial and that we got a good outcome in the trial. I believe it's one of the most important cases that I've worked on in the last 24 years. Because I believe, like probably most of you do in this room, that we have the best civil justice system in the world here. But too many people in our country don't agree with that. And too many people have negative opinions about lawyers and lawsuits. When we read books about trial strategy or listen to lawyers talk about trial strategy, one of the things that probably all of you have heard that's important for trial lawyers to do in jury selection is to identify the jurors that have negative feelings about lawyers and lawsuits, and then help them to admit that they can't be fair to the plaintiff in a lawsuit so that they can be disqualified. Well, our case was a case against a law firm for filing a bad lawsuit. So we had a lot of debate about whether we actually want the lawsuit haters off the jury or whether we wanted to keep them and argue to them that this was their chance to do something about frivolous lawsuits. And so that's how we chose to approach it. And so I spent a lot of our time in jury selection encouraging the jurors to tell us everything that's wrong with lawsuits and to have them say in their own words what they expect from lawyers if they're going to file a lawsuit. And so not surprisingly, they came up on their own with our case theme. Lawyers have to investigate, and they have to be sure that a case has merit before they file it, because it can be very damaging to someone, as it was here, if you get sued, and especially for something as inflammatory as fraud. And the civil fraud case, as Judge Manley explained, led to criminal charges that were eventually dismissed, but very harmful to Ms. McAtee. So I remember thinking when I was getting ready to do that in jury selection that I was going to feel hypocritical because, like probably most of you, I preach the benefits of lawsuits. I argue with friends and family that we don't really have a problem with frivolous lawsuits in our country, that that's propaganda from the insurance industry and from the Chamber of Commerce. Lawyers don't file frivolous cases because they don't want to lose. They have their own money invested, and it's kind of a false problem. But then it also occurred to me that it really wasn't hypocritical at all, because even though I think all of that is true, it's also true that some lawyers abuse the privilege that they have from a license to practice law. Some lawyers do file frivolous lawsuits, and when that happens, it contributes to the lack of confidence that the public has in our civil justice system. And so it was very important that in this case, and I think it's important in any case like that lawyers be held accountable in the courts just like any other professional that has obligations and duties to their clients, and in the case of lawyers, to the court and to the public. We also weren't really sure how jurors, and particularly jurors that we got worked up about bad lawsuits, how they would react to the concept of using a lawsuit to hold lawyers accountable for filing a bad lawsuit. And so we talked about that in jury selection too, and all of them agreed that was a perfect way to hold lawyers accountable, is by bringing them into the courtroom and showing them what it's like to get sued in a lawsuit. And the verdict reflected that was how they felt also. Mike McEwen's here tonight. Thanks, Mike, for bringing us in on the case and for all of your work. Mike was with us since day one, did a lot of great work on the case, including a lot of really good support work in the trial. My wife, Melissa, is here with our youngest daughter, Cammie, tonight. Thanks, Melissa, again for taking care of everything else in my life so that I can spend the time that it takes to do this work and hopefully do it well. And thanks, Ben. Your work in the McAtee case was outstanding. And I'll say that we handled this trial together, but for 10 years and 3 trips to the Montana Supreme Court, 90% of that work was done by Mr. Snipes.
I was at a wedding a couple weeks ago, and I think it's the new thing for kids to keep their notes on their phone. And the best man was giving a speech off his phone. I was like, that's such a millennial thing to do. Now I'm 40 years old and thinking to myself, I'll never do that. And then I got to my hotel room and there wasn't a pen and paper around. So at the risk of looking younger than I should, I'm running off my phone today. This trial and the trial work that we do is incredibly difficult. Trial work's a roller coaster. We all know that. If you've been to trial and you do the type of work we do, there's tons of ups and downs. And this case certainly reflects that. Mark, as you understand, and when you hear him speak, he's such an impressive X's and O's guy. And my style is just a little bit different. I'm more of a from the heart guy. And this was a case that really struck me. And it's really a case that reflects that ups and downs of the roller coaster. Going to the Supreme Court 3 times, twice on appeal of dispositive motions that kicked our case out was gut punches. From there, we got the case back into district court to have 2 settlements with Whitefish Credit Union, and the last being for malicious prosecution from the credit union, leaving only their counsel left to defend itself in the malicious prosecution case. And as trial lawyers, you want to think like, oh, we'll take anything to trial, and but it's not always in the best interest of your client to take cases to trial. And this is a case where we had 2 settlements in advance of a trial, one of which might have been a significant offset. So settling seemed like the best option. And we talked about this, but settlement was never really a realistic option in this case for multiple reasons, mostly based on the 2 parties. First, our client had been through 10 years of being called a fraud in the most public way, being ruined in every way. And her interest, particularly after 2 settlements, was vindication, not necessarily cash reward. And so getting any authority from her was going to be difficult. Even more difficult was to convince a defendant that was convinced himself that he had not done anything wrong. So, a month before trial, we're at a motions in limine hearing, and you heard Judge Manley talk about what occurred right after. Mike and I were at the hearing. We had argued, and I just kind of sheepishly approached the prospect of of settlement, and the defendant said, not a chance, and we will see how good your trial skills are. So I thought Mike McEwen's Butte side was going to come out in the district courthouse in Flathead County. I said, let's get out of here, Mike. And 2 weeks before trial, we did get authority from our client to offer $300,000. No response came. So between the good fortune that we had and 2 unrelenting parties, we were able to put together what I consider a legacy verdict. Very important to me, and I'm grateful to all involved, and particularly the opposing sides, which made this one happen. So now from the hard side, I don't know if you guys have heard of the 4 burner theory in life. There's a New York Times article that came out, I think it was probably about 10 years ago, and it's basically, the concept is life is a 4 burner stove. You got your health, you got your family, you got your friends, and you got your work. And if you're going to be really good at something, you got to shut off one of those burners so you can focus on the other 3. If you want to be great at something, you got to shut off 2 burners. And if you think about it in the context of your life, like you're always juggling things and, work-life balance and things like that. And in our craft, it's really not that easy to do. And so often trial work puts a strain on the family burner. And I've been very blessed to have a partner in my wife, Tori, who gets it. She understands why we do what we do. She understands the why, and that's super important. And again, when, just like Mark said, when our job blurs the rest of your life because you're so singularly focused on what's going on, Tori has always picked up the pieces, and I appreciate it so much. And she's really just been the best thing that's ever happened in my life. My kids are here. They've been going to my office every weekend, or about 2 or 3 weekends a year, or excuse me, a month. 2 or 3 weekends a month since they were babies. And I ask them almost every Saturday or Sunday, should we go to the office? And they still say yes. They're excited. So when I get to a chance to practice the way I do and bring them to the office, I don't really have to turn the family burner off as much. And I appreciate that so much. So I know how meaningful this award is to me, and I may never get another chance to win this. And so it means the world to me to have my family here to take part. And I'm really thankful to keep that family burner going. I'm also lucky to share a practice with my 2 best friends, Mark, of course, and Ross. Mark's a mentor, a big brother, an example of how to practice law the right way. He does everything with precision and integrity, and his honesty is unquestioned. And it's just important that I've got to see that as far as my career goes. The other thing is, and that's part of the friendship burner. I get to selfishly keep that going. And another big part of my practice, just like Judge Manley's, is co-counseling with attorneys I really enjoy working with, one of which is Mike McEwen. And it's funny that Jim said he traveled with Mr. Beers all over the country. Mike and I have been all the way from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles in the last few years, just working on cases and having the best time. For the last 9 years, Mike has marched with us in this case. We've spent many nights at his Flathead Lake family house as a makeshift war room, doing deposition prep, just going over the documents. He was a master of knowing what was going on in this case. So much so, it's been so long that we watched Kobe Bryant's last game at his lake house between deposition days, and that was in 2016. So thanks, Mike, for sticking by us. Last thing I'd like to say is, as it stands, our world as trial lawyers is starting to feel boxed in. Even in the last 15 years since I've been practicing, it seems to be harder to do what's necessary and take the course that's best for your client because it's being blocked. Our cause of action are being diminished, damages are being diminished. So I think what we've got in this organization is very important. It's going to take creativity and vision for us to continue to provide full and fair justice for our clients. And I'm thankful to have friends in this room, very thankful to have partners like I do, and thankful to have this organization to keep the vision clear and everybody working towards the same goal to keep the civil justice in Montana trending towards what it needs to be for our clients. So in closing, check your burners, keep your vision, and continue fighting the good fight. And I appreciate you all. Thanks so much.
All right, you're not quite done. We got one more. I just wanted to thank again the award recipients and their families for being here. It's always great to see everyone and their families, and I appreciate everyone attending, especially folks from outside the system. Welcome, and thank you for coming. The last and final event of the night before you're off to bed or bar, whichever you choose, is an award or at least a recognition for our fearless leader this past year, Pat Fox. Helped steer MTLA this previous year, and we appreciate his efforts in doing that. I will be taking over the helm tomorrow at 1:15. So I'm still free tonight, so we'll do the bar and not bed yet. So I wanted to thank Pat and all of us on the board to thank you for your hours and hours of dedication, and come up and get your fancy clock.
I guess it's beer 30. I just want to say thanks to this organization. Today at the CLE, when Lauren was talking about plug-in, when I was within a month or two of being a defense lawyer, I realized it wasn't for me. I was sitting in a deposition in an FELA case, and I came away thinking, man, that guy was really hurt. It is hurt, and life has really changed. And the mentor lawyer who I was with said, he was just a liar, wasn't he? And I thought, oh, this isn't going to work. And I actually became a member of MTLA while I worked for that law firm. And I don't really know why. I think it was just that desire to become a part of something that I believed in. And ultimately, I ultimately went to the plaintiff's practice. And I can say that what Judge Manley was talking about, what Tom Beers was talking about, what some of these older lawyers are talking about, these friendships and everything else, it's the truth. And as you evolve, and I'm no longer a young lawyer, and I'm not yet, I think, an old lawyer, I start to see, like, 15 years ago, I was thinking, how's that gonna work out? But it does. And so it's actually just my honor to be able to be a part of this organization and to serve it. And frankly, I don't really think the titles are that important. We all do a lot of work. We spend a lot of time, busy four-burner lives. Got that little one in the middle, the one that on the fancy stoves, that's for the MTLA, and so I just want to thank you all, and thanks to Stacy for taking over the helm next year. And I'm not a Chicken Little kind of guy. I look out here and, when when countries are engaged in war, they're not really worried about anything except to do their job, because if they don't, their life is, they either die or their life as they know it changes. And I don't think we have to worry about the future. I think we just have to do what we do. And I'm just absolutely certain that if we continue doing what we're doing and doing what we do, we will win. So don't worry, keep working hard, and all of this craziness will pass. So thank you very much.